Hi everyone, Mature Simmer here. So it's time to harvest, or at least it's the month to harvest, but as you can see, harvesting while it's raining reduces the yield. So this was my concern, but it looks like in the next hour or so it's going to stop, and then till late into the day, so the next 10 hours, it stays dry, so I should be able to get this crop off the field without any detrimental effects. So I'm going to wait, and I'll be back in a bit. Popping back in here, and as you can see, the sun will come out today, not tomorrow. So all good. And terrible Annie reference aside, obviously what was to be expected given the forecast that we had seen. So I'm going to run a couple rows here as normal. Now this should go, I would hope, relatively quickly, because soybeans are relatively low yield. They return quite a bit. It's a crop that can get up in the 800, 900, even 1,000 per liter category versus something like the grain, like wheat that we were selling for $280, $320 per 1,000. But, you know, it gets up there because it just doesn't yield as much. So as opposed to, I don't remember what we had, the 120,000 or so, or 100,000 liters we got off this field in wheat. You know, maybe we'll have less than that. Maybe we had more. I don't remember. I think we got about $100,000 off, or 80,000 to 100,000 off the field. So it would have been more than 100,000. It might have been closer to 300,000. But that may be the thing. Like, we may get 100 here. So the first test we're going to have is, I think barley, I made it all the way down and back. But wheat, I ended up running into the field a bit because I was already full before I came back. So that'll give us a bit of a example of what it's like. Once I turn around, I will take a look at what my options are, because once again, I'm waiting for auctions to start on the land so that I can get a couple pieces of land once they finally come up to put my yard in, and that will be when a silo will appear on this farm. So right now I am siloless, which means any harvesting I'm doing just sells at the current market price. It's kind of like, you know, going to your favorite seafood place, and, you know, I'm not working with a stocked lobster. I'm eating what they have today, and if they're going to charge me $100 for that lobster instead of 30, 3 months from now, I'm going to have to pay $100 if I want to eat it today. So it's kind of the same type of thing. So anyway, let's jump in. Ooh, not great, but, you know, certainly better. Like if I go to wheat, you know, it's still a few hundred higher. So Bubba Gump, okay, Dragons I think is right here. Bubba Gump's at the end. I think Bubba Gump was the one where I went and sold my milk. I just want to make sure I'm not running off the field. I am not, but let me just keep steering appropriately. And I will verify the Bubba Gump. Yes, Bubba Gump's Farmer's Market. So that's going to be my target. It's not that much further. I mean, obviously, at the end of the driveway is close. It's super close, but to be able to make an extra $20 per 1,000 in a crop that's that's low yielding, that's probably worth it, because I'm only going to have, you know, maybe 200,000 liters if I'm lucky, and, you know, that'll give me 20 extra for each of those. So it's not like I'm taking tons and tons of trips here. So, alright, well, I think we already can see, like, this was about the time where I ran through the grain and destroyed some of my crop with wheat. So I'm getting about half the yield But right now, just because of how things work, this is not the opportune time to sell soybeans. So I'm definitely taking a pretty substantial hit. Because if we look at this, you can see I'm literally almost at the low point. So, and that's somewhat common if you think about it. I mean, the way Farming Simulator works would certainly be a supply and demand requirement, or, you know, kind of a supply and demand, or an appropriate supply and demand result. I'm going to try to do this before I have to stop. There we go. Just trying to adjust the line on the fly, sometimes a little more challenging, but that worked out. But yeah, so this is substantially more, but obviously soybeans can only be harvested once. I think we have a little bit more flexibility in grain because there's a couple periods where I could plant, and the harvest window is like 6 or 7 months. But basically, you know, every soybean farmer has been pulling them off the field between October, November, and December. And my problem is, since I had to wait all the way to December before they were ready, pretty much anybody else that's grown soybeans here in Hobos Hollow has been flooding the market with those things, and the little suckers are not really that necessary at this point. So what I would normally have done is I would throw it in the silo and I'd sit on it till, say, May or June, and probably get 75 to 100% more than I'm going to get for them now. But once again, we're not playing for profit strictly. Obviously, I don't want to be losing money, but I don't think I'm going to be losing money. But at this point, it's just getting a little bit of cash off this field as opposed to just letting it sit till I get a silo, because then I'm just in almost that same boat where all I'm doing is operating a dairy farm, and that's not really what I'm looking to do. I mean, it's not fun for me. It's not fun for you. You know, I'd like to run an actual farm here. It's just, I'm certainly not running a farm the way you should be, because we've got the artificial problem and the constraint put in that we have no way to acquire land, and we're now approaching 6 weeks in that state, and we don't have a time of when that's going to change. So to say it's challenging or pretend it's not challenging would be disingenuous. I mean, I think anybody understands this is less than optimal. You know, obviously there is a potential danger for anybody. I mean, I'm trying to be patient. I've not heard some mass exodus or something, but frankly, I think that's because you know, we don't have any real clear stats of how many people are actively playing at any point in time. You can make speculation based on the number of servers and so forth, but you don't even know, you know, unless you're going and visiting each server and just kind of keeping an eye on progress week to week, seeing if people's cash is changing or their situation's changing. There could be farmers that are there but play once every 30 days. So, you know, the question is, I don't know how active things are. The entrepreneurs area became a lot more significant a while back when the split happened, and with some of the new or gimmicky ways of doing the farming, the enhanced realism, the generational farming that we've been given, that has drawn some people back. But as far as regular farms like this, I don't know how much is going on, to be honest. You know, I think there's an attempt to resurrect interest in that by staggering calendars, by changing things through what we're doing in the revamp. It's just right now we're kind of in a wait and see point to see what things are going to look like. So I'm hopeful, and I'm okay, you know, doing what I need to do, which is wait. But there may be people at some point who are like, you know, I'm just not doing it. I mean, I know the other FM on this server, for example, has made the decision to go ahead and sponsor a server with another map because there isn't enough for them to do right now on this, and so they got bored and decided to do something else. Now again, one can argue, once again, strictly speaking, FSN isn't a business, but to some degree, I think again, it's a disingenuous statement to say because servers need to be sponsored to keep things running and so forth, that there isn't a cash flow piece involved. There's nothing that I would say, oh, they're trying to make a profit here or there or whatever, but to some degree, it certainly plays into the fact, hey, if you've got people who are suddenly willing to sponsor that weren't willing to sponsor if everything was running as it was, it's not as if it hurts FSN to get people feeling like the other FM is, which is, hey, I'm going to spend 25 or 50 bucks a month that I wouldn't have been spending because I'm bored and I want to do something else. And if we were able to get land here, they might not do that. So suddenly that allows another, $50 in the coffers to spend for servers. So it is what it is in that case. Alright, so we finally got a full harvester after both the headlands and almost a full up and down in the field. So you can kind of see how this is playing out. But it's just good to get this off, because at this point, once again, it's late in the day because of the rain. I've got to, if I'm being upfront, I've got an hour to get this done. I don't know that I can do the whole field in an hour. It is helpful with a low yield crop and gives me a better chance because my work time is maximized here, because I'm just running the harvester most of the time and obviously unloading a lot less frequently. Basically, probably you could almost make the argument half as much as I was before. So in theory, the waste time that's not work time should drop by about half, because I'm going to get a much lower yield. Now I'm running those soybeans a little farther, not faster. That's what I was going to come out of my mouth. So that may honestly negate any of the time savings I had, because it's a good 5 to 7 minute round trip going down to Bubba Gump, where driving to the end of the driveway here might be a minute. So I might be adding, 5 or 6 minutes every time the truck needs to run. Even if I've got to run the truck 3 times, we're talking about 15 extra minutes. And if this is a field that would take me an hour and a half to do, 15 minutes is a good chunk of that. But kind of reverting to the reality of where we're at. I want auctions to come back. I can't, I need a way to get more land, because at this point I'm kind of stagnant in what I'm able to do. And that would be no different right now in the other servers, like Enhanced Realism or whatever. The only thing that gives us some flexibility is generational servers. But again, with what I'm doing there and how that operates, yeah, I have enough money to buy more land, but I'm not going to change from grass by buying more land. Like, to me, this is my play series. This is the one that I can kind of role play as a real farm, where the other one is just a fake competition. I'm trying to artificially play the game in a way that generates the most cash flow, and that's not the way I am operating a farm normally. I'm more operating it for the fun of playing, and sure, I'd like to improve some cash flow here, because if I'm going to put in the effort, if I can sell this crop for 1,000 versus 600, but with customs being removed as an option, which I think that is not coming back from the way that was explained. Like, we will have customs, but we're not going to have that differential in value that we did before that gave you some significant choices, where you really had 2 markets. It's just going to sound more like customs is going to turn into just a option to tell your story, to do your role playing of, am I sending it out off my map or am I selling locally? And so to me, frankly, what I'm hearing of customs, it is not exciting. It's just extending reality and letting you sell a different way, but it's going to not have any kind of a differentiator. So to me, that's not going to change anything if that comes back and when it comes back. So I'm not looking at that as something, but right now, not being able to hold a crop and sell it when I can get the best price, which is normally how you'd be running a farm, that has an absolute impact. And it's frustrating that we can't do that right now. But I understand, it's volunteer group, it's a small group. They can only work on one thing at a time. They're human like the rest of us, and so we wait because there's not a choice, unless we just decide to quit and, not participate anymore. But I still, enjoy the concept, the process, and all of that. So here I am. I've not really found anything that's necessarily better. So, but kind of with that said, I guess closing this out, I mean, there are other multiplayer communities out there, like I think Farmers Only or something like that, Farmers Club, I forget what they're called, that offer multiplayer servers and so forth and aren't going through a revamp. So, if the revamp drags on long enough, there may be attrition from folks where we just say, look, I just need to be able to play. And right now I'm in a worse position than if I was just in single player. This has taken longer than I think than I was expecting. I mean, I would argue it's taken longer than I think any of us were expecting. We weren't ever given a time frame, but I think if we would have been polled when the revamp was announced, taking longer than 6 weeks would have not, I think, been anything that garnered a lot of votes. I think you'd be talking about 10 or 15% of people would have gone for that. Everybody would have gone for something shorter than that. Because the amount of disruption that you have being down that long with significant portions of the ecosystem is... You can't say it's not disruptive. So, but it just makes for... my hands are tied on what I can provide you guys here. Like, unless I just do things that are ultimately going to be counterproductive to my farm. Like, I could place buildings on the things I have, but I don't want the buildings there. First off, I don't have flat ground, so I start violating what FSN would prefer us to do, which is don't do a lot of terraforming, don't create a lot of problems. So my only out is something that they don't want me to do. So you can see again why there's the frustration. It's like, give me an alternative. If they went to be like generational farming, we're fine. We don't have auctions, but you can now just buy land on the server, and just, if you have money, go ahead and buy it. That would solve the problem. I mean, frankly, we could go ahead and do that, but of course they'd have to change the server settings, and that would open up a bunch of other things and so forth. So I get why they, in theory, can't do that, but I'm just expressing my feelings out loud on this one, because I think that's what folks come to expect on the channel, certainly, and I want to be upfront for those who might be new viewers who are like, all right, why are you dealing with this and so forth. The short answer is I like the community enough, and I'm hopeful for what the outcome will be when we come out on the other side, but I just really would like us to get there soon. And I understand to some degree why they haven't put a date out there yet, because if they miss it, then we're going to be like, the expectations will be blown. That's going to make it worse to some degree, but there has to be a realization, I think, that at some point just the not knowing is going to have the same impact once it starts getting long enough, and that tolerance level is going to be different for all. I would say I have a longer tolerance than most people, and so me getting to the end of my rope probably is pretty telling. Because what I've seen with a lot of the play base in FSN, and it's not anything that would be unexpected, but people tend to like to move maps every 90 to 120 days. They're not like me where I'll stay on a map for years. So to me, the attention span or the desire without change is very low in the FSN player base, and therefore kind of forcing stagnation, I think, fights against that. And so I just don't know how many people you might have that are just like have walked away again from actively running a farm because of some of these things that are shut off right now. So so kind of wrapping that up, that's really kind of the news of the day of what we've got going on here and where we're at. I've got to get this crop harvested. I shouldn't really have a problem. Obviously, I've got 12 hours before the end of the day on the server. Again, it does need to be synced up a little bit. It buys me a little bit of time because I haven't been on in 2 or 3 days to do that because I knew there was nothing else to do in the interim. But I'm going to get this done, and that is my focus. But I'll be back at the end to at least let you know where we ended up once we sold the soybeans. So I'll just kind of come back up to tie things up, and that will be it as I run through my field, darn it. Again, another harvest where I couldn't do it because I'm talking and not paying attention. So shame on me, no one to blame but me on that one, but probably lost 100 liters or less, hopefully, but I hit it pretty quickly. But it's still 2 pretty big tracks into the field there. But so that I can avoid doing that again, I'll stop talking and I'll start focusing exclusively on the harvest, and then, as I said, I'll be back at the end just so that you have closure on what we did. So I'll see you in a bit. Alright, so you know what? I lied again. It's kind of a common theme. Not the lying. I'm not really lying intentionally, but as soon as I stopped, I realized there was a big piece I didn't share. So I did, in between the last episode and this one, after I had done the hay, I did go ahead and mow the field again and throw things in for silage. So you can see here I'm full, but I've got quite a bit more because I had gotten about 1 million off the field before. I've moved some things over to the cow barn in the past, so that consumed some and so forth. But I did go ahead. I just didn't create an episode because if you want grass work, go watch my generational farming series. I'm doing nothing but grass work there. So I felt there probably wouldn't have been a huge appetite for an episode of grass work that frankly took place in the middle of the night, because that's when I could get on and do it. So unlike now, where you can see stuff, there was nothing to see really there. So that's the only thing I wanted to pop in and let you know, that did happen in the interim as well. And now I will go away until the end, so I will see you in a bit. So the day is wrapping up here. I'm going to go ahead and get this last batch into the truck, and then we'll go put the harvester away, or get it off the field is kind of what the put it away thing is. But as opposed to the last time, we're not running out of gas, we're not having any of those issues, so we're in good shape that way. So I'll go ahead, kind of like what I did last time, get past the tree line and place it there. So I've just run 1 truck over, so I've got less than 160,000 liters. The biggest challenge, honestly, has been, I had to wait a little while for this to get completed. So you can see, it was 7 hours later or whenever I ended last time. in that time, the price has dropped from like 660 to barely 600, and it may actually be even lower than that. So by the time I sold the first batch, it was around 612, but when I last checked, it was at like 605. Alright, it's sitting at 608, because at this point, Dragon's right here is just as good. But this point is now going to get me basically it's 146,713 is what we have as the total amount. So I have about $4,200 of supply put into that field. So that's one of the nice things with soy, is it doesn't require a lot. Seed by far was the most. So with the See and Spray technology, getting the weeds, even with the amount we had to do, it was I think like $100. I'm sorry, it was $430 for weeds, but it was barely over $100. It was like $112 for fertilizer, because soy doesn't really take any fertilizer. So the majority of the cost was in seeds, which also isn't a huge consumer. So like I said, we had 4,200, and if I'm super conservative at 605, you know, we're probably talking, because we were, I think, with the one load, about 44,000. So not too terribly bad, but you know, we didn't make we're not going to make the 90,000 in profit that I was making, like the others, or probably even 68,000. I guess it wasn't 90,000 in profit, because that was where I was at with without the supplies, because I had planted kind of the year before. So though I think I had 23,000 in, but that just gives you an example. So it took like $23,000 to plant the grain, but it takes 4,000 to plant soy in that same field. And as expected, I've got to get some hay moved over at a minimum, so I'm going to do that so that I don't run out of things by the morning. But that is going to be it for now. But you can see we're back up at 2.7 million after doing several repairs. Just getting this disconnected, and then I need to go get that crampy trailer, which I have sitting way over here from when I did the mineral feed. And then all I'm going to do is just run a single load of hay over. Straw doesn't get consumed that fast, and then I should be able to maybe, you know, pick it up in the morning, because it's actually quite late. I really need to be wrapping up. I was hoping I could just step away, but what I don't want to do is, you know, for something that's going to take me another 5 minutes or so, I don't want to run into a situation where once again I start losing the full feed value of the cows. So I will say, I think I've said it before, this map, I think from a lighting standpoint, is pretty dark. So I think it's using one of the lighting changes that were introduced a little while back to make things a little more realistic. But like with the truck, you really can't see very far. I'm just trying to avoid again the loud tunnel as we pull through the hayloft. So just starting up here again once I'm full, but this will get me what I need to get to the morning, and also to probably be able to sync up. I mean, I'm going to have to keep an eye out on the straw. If it somehow gets really low, I'm going to have to run that back, but I don't think it uses even 1,000 in an hour. I think it's substantially lower than that. So I should be good. There we go. So that'll get me almost 60,000 more to the 18,000 or so I had. So I should be in excellent shape. But that feeding robot can keep going because it won't be too terribly long. It's just a matter of, am I going to be able to check in immediately in the morning? But if I am, you know, we're talking 6-7 hours. So, but 78,000, 35,000 should be good. So that will be it. Let me just turn the lights off because I don't need those. It's just nice to get in that habit. But another day on the farm, another night is wrapping up. But more importantly, I did get my crop off the field, but the lack of the silo and the lack of the land. So once again, I want these two pieces, 67 and 68. That's where I'm going to put my yard, my silo, and so forth. So I need to be able to get land. And then I can avoid stuff like this where the price fell $50 in the course of the time I was working the field. And once again, it's not a huge amount because basically I had, what, 144, so I probably lost $7,200 or something, so it wasn't massive, you know, but it's still thousands of dollars that things shifted. And more importantly, I could have held on to this soy until it got certainly over 1,000 and had a much more different situation, because that would have been probably closer to 20,000 as far as the swing at that point. Actually, it probably would have been even more than that. It might have been 30 or 40,000, because we'd be talking about $400 times, you know, 144, so it'd be like $50,000-$60,000. So it's not a small amount. So I would love to be able to do that. So I'm just going to keep hoping that we're getting there soon. And in the interim, I will see you next time.